few months ago, I had the incredible opportunity to sit at the feet of none other than Rod Meldrum, soaking in his wisdom about the greatest global flood in history, the baptism of the earth. We delved into the deluge, the truth about how long it takes to form crystals, the truth about it, and the truth about how long it takes to form fossils. My mind was blown. We talked about the young earth, which we both believe. And I know you can have your own theories, but watch. We even talked about how to make your own fossils at home. Rod's insights were nothing short of fascinating, revealing why there's evidence that the earth is a water world rather than a molten ball of lava. Water is holy. Water is life. It makes sense to my spirit. I don't know about you, how you're going to come away from this, but it makes sense to me. Now, I must warn you, Rod can talk forever. The main video is a whopping 3 hours and 20 minutes long, but don't worry, I've got you covered. I split it up into 7 main talking points for easier digestion. So without further ado, enjoy the playlist, The Baptism of a Young Earth. But am I right when I say that all of this can happen with a young Earth idea in mind?
Oh, we're going to go there.
Okay, sorry. I won't go there.
Don't worry, but
right.
we have to understand some of the foundational things before we can really go there, because you can't just blurt it out and say, "Well, the Earth is young."
Right. Gotcha.
And in fact, I
want to
refute that idea right off the bat.
This is good evidence to support some of that, though. Really good evidence. Well,
the question is how young.
Right.
Joseph Smith made the claim.
Okay, pause right there. You're blurry, really blurry for some reason. But I just remembered where you left off. Joseph Smith made the claim. So don't worry. Joseph Smith made the claim. We were talking about young Earth. Okay,
there we go.
There, perfect. I don't know why it was doing that.
Focused on that. Okay, you want to make a note that we made that change.
I did. Okay. I'm going to edit there. I got it.
I think it's picking up stuff as I put it up close to the camera. You need to probably keep it further away.
Yeah, that's about maybe an hour in. Let's see. Yeah, I'll find it. Joseph Smith
we're already an hour? Man, we haven't even
started.
No,
I don't know. We're good. Joseph Smith made the claim. I'll edit right there. Don't worry. All right, go ahead. We were talking about young Earth, and you said Joseph Smith made the claim.
Yeah, so Joseph Smith actually made the claim that the Earth, the materials that made up the Earth, that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It's always existed. So the material that makes up the Earth is limitless as far as its age, and could very well be billions of years or whatever, like the 5.7 billion years of the Earth that is commonly mentioned by science. Okay, so back to my colleagues and I. So it took a while for us to actually break the code how to do this, because, like I said, this was highly classified information right after World War II. But then it became a technological thing because we need it for technology. And there's about 20 companies around the world that make quartz crystals in these giant autoclaves that are deep in the ground. They put them down 4 or 5 stories deep on the earth. So in case they do rupture or break, that doesn't blow half a block away,
right?
But they make these things still to this day. Okay, but we need to do it in a smaller version, so that's what we did. So anyway, so it's called, again, hydrothermal. We call it hyperthermal because it has to do with pressure as well as water and heat. So those 3 things. I've got several examples. Once my colleagues and I figured out how we could actually take quartz crystals and literally double their size in just a few hours, and so forth, we thought, well, I wonder what would happen if we put a piece of wood in the system, or a piece of bone, like a chicken bone or something, into the system, and just see what happens when you introduce a carbon carbon source basically into that. And unfortunately, you can't see the videos, the pictures here, but I'll just have to describe it. So in the video, in the DVD, if you get a copy of that, you'll see that the actual photographs of some of our initial experiments that we did. But we were actually able to take a piece of wood, or it could be a piece of bone, and literally turn it into a rock in between 48 and 56 hours.
Well, then, okay, but let me stop you here, because then you don't have to have millions of years to form all this.
This is the point.
Oh, because you were just saying that maybe there could be millions of years of when you're talking about.
I'm just saying that the material that the Earth is made up of. Okay, if you take
I see. If it's coming from other matter, okay.
Yeah, that's matter, but it wasn't really organized.
It is matter unorganized, right?
And the organization of the Earth happened approximately 13,000 years ago.
Okay, so I was right. I was on the right track. Okay,
yeah, you were on the right track. But there was a spiritual creation, as we know from the doctrine, from the Pearl of Great Price. Okay, we know there was a spiritual creation that was done first, and then there was the physical creation. And then that took about 7,000 years, because it was 7 days, and God it's 3 times in the scriptures told us what that ratio is. It basically says 1 day to God is 7,000 years, or excuse me, is 1,000 years of this earth. Just so you kind of understand from a scientific standpoint, what that technically means is that 1 day, which is by definition the revolution of a planet at 360 degrees on its axis, okay, that constitutes a day. When the Earth rotates all the way around, that's a day, right? That's 24 hours on the Earth. But the planet upon which God dwells, which is the planet which is Nyan Kolob, which is a governing planet according to the Book of Abraham and so forth.
Yes,
that planet is a super giant planet. It is so big that in the same amount of time that God's planet would rotate one time on its axis, 360 degrees, our Earth will have made 1,000 revolutions around our sun.
Right.
So a day to God is 1,000 years to man. And
Amen.
that is not like a hypothetical. That's God telling us what it is.
Finally, I'm there. That's what this is what we used to believe, folks. A lot of Latter-day Saints used to believe this, and I still do, that the Doctrine and Covenants is literal. When Joseph Smith is asking the angel, what are we to believe about each seal? The angel is being literal. He's speaking English. He's speaking 1830 something, or he's speaking the English that we spoke in the 1800s, in the 19th century. Okay. Yes. He wasn't going 1,000 years, but technically that means 10 million. And no.
Well, people have said, well, maybe that's just a period.
But then the angel would say
of time, that could be indeterminable. It could be maybe it's a million years each of those days or whatever.
But then why would the angel be confusing us? He's not trying to confuse us.
Exactly. So the bottom line is that, so if that's the case, then it was 7,000 years of the Earth's original creation, and then since that time, it's been another 6,000 years since Adam and Eve
been on the earth.
Okay, and we have that biblically. We know that the whole ancestry from Adam and Eve all the way up to our day today. But there was a big point in time where all that got kind of chunked down into just a small group of people on a boat. Right. In fact, it's really interesting. I wish I had more time to talk to you about this. But bottom line,
get the DVD, folks.
If you grab the DVD, what's that?
I said, get the DVD, folks.
Yeah, if you grab the DVD, you'll actually see photographs of the experiments that we did. And actually, the one I'm looking at right at the moment is actually the end of the autoclave when we first pulled it open and actually did petrified wood. Okay. Because it was very different than the previous experiments. And we have just to kind of describe it. So you've got the titanium wires and so forth. There's stainless steel wires that we would use to hold the quartz crystals and the wood in place within the reactor in the upper part of it. And then actually in the DVD, I explain even more about the whole process, and we just don't have time to go into all that right now. But the bottom line is that it caused quartz to grow all over the wires, all over everything. The inside of the autoclave was completely like it looked like a geode on the inside of the reactor.
Wow.
Because of what happened here. Anyway, so let's get just for a second here. The bottom
Well, let
line
me
is,
just say this, brothers and sisters, this means that science isn't always right. And I've always said this to some of
well,
what really
science is always changing.
that's what I mean. It's always changing. That what we thought 20 years ago isn't. Look at dinosaurs. Now they got feathers. You know, the Tyrannosaurus Rex looks different. We don't even call it that anymore. We don't call it this. All the dinosaurs kind of changed, and it's like, come on. You know, that's it. Let me just say this and I'll be quiet.
Huh?
You don't have, I always talk to my wife about this because she's a scientific person and she's a convert. And I go, babe, why does it have to take millions of years to form something that we live on or just anything? Why can't it be thousands of years?
It's because we don't see it happening today is the reason.
Right.
You know, this is not something that we see, active, fossilization happening or petrification happening today, except at the bottom of oceanic trenches in what they call they have white and black smokers. Basically, these hydrothermal vents that come up out of the bottom of the ocean and release material into the bottom of the ocean where it's warm enough, where it's up to around 400 degrees Celsius, and also it's in water, and it's also at 30,000 feet in depth. The pressure is about 13,000 pounds per square inch. So you have all of the conditions, the three conditions necessary for the formation of petrified wood and petrified bones and so forth. It's all the same process.
Wow.
It's just whether it's a carbon-based life form that's wood or plants or animals. If it's carbon-based, it will be replaced by the silicon dioxide that is residing in the flood waters, if you will, of the flood. And that's why we find petrified wood and dinosaur bones literally on every continent of the earth. Well, maybe the exception of Antarctica. I don't think they've found it there yet, but basically up in the farthest reaches up at Axel Heiberg Island, which is only a few degrees off of the North Pole. They find huge logs of petrified wood. That is interesting because up there's no way that wood could have come from there. Okay, because we're talking about a 5 foot or 6 foot diameter.
So you're saying this petrification, is that the right term?
Petrification.
That can happen within days.
Well, basically, yes. Yeah. That's the short answer.
Right.
Okay.
Right, okay.
It's a little more complex than that.
Right.
But bottom line is that Axel Heiberg Island, which is just off of the North Pole, that's an area where the sun never goes down for 6 months of the year, and it never comes up for 6 months of the year because of the tilt of the Earth. Okay, so in the summertime of that area, the sun literally just goes round and around the horizon, basically, for 6 months of the year, and the other 6 months of the year, the sun never makes it over the horizon.
Right.
Well, how do you have 6 foot diameter trees growing there when it's dark for 6 months of the year? That's end stage growth of trees in a place where it's pretty much just all ice, but yet here they are, right? So there's really questions. Where did those logs come from? Were they? What is that possible evidence that these massive trees were taken from equatorial regions of the earth and actually deposited up on almost the North Pole, and petrified in the process? Lots of things to consider there. Okay,
yes, anyway, lots of things to consider.
So bottom line is, what have we been taught since our childhood that is in the center of the earth? We're going to go straight into just mainstream science.
Hot magma.
It's hot magma, right? We show that, and all kinds of things. In fact, the sad thing is that
the Earth's core. We always call it the Earth's core.
Even in our own temple endowment ceremony, it's shown as a big, hot, molten, massive, roiling rock and whatever, right? And then it slowly cools off and so forth. But the problem is that actually happened. First off, it doesn't follow what the scriptures say, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. It all comes down to this group of people who were back in the 1400s, I think it was 1200s and 1400s over in Europe. There was the Plutonists, the Vulcanists, and the Plutonists, Vulcanists, and the no, there's a third group. Anyway, I'm trying to remember what their name is. It'll come to me in just a second. Okay, but anyway, but bottom line is that there are people who thought the Earth is a rock. It's basically primarily a rock. Is obviously we're walking around. It's primarily a rock. There's other people that said that the Vulcanists said, no, well, we have these big volcanoes like Vesuvius and so forth in Italy that have gone off. So the Earth is actually a big ball of molten magma. And then there's the third group, which was the oh my goodness, now I can't believe I'm
what was the first one?
The Plutonists, the Vulcanists, and then the water people. Like I keep wanting to say the Aquarius, but it's not. That's
but they weren't Vulcans. Like live long and prosper.
No, they weren't live long and prosper.
Neptunism.
The Neptunists. That's
Neptunism. I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah.
Neptunism,
okay.
Plutonism,
yes.
and Vulcanism.
Yeah, and the Neptunists basically said that the Earth is primarily oceans, and so it's mostly a water planet, and so forth. Well, anyway, so they all kind of had like this big conference, kind of like the Nicene, the conference,
the Nicene Creed,
the Nicene Creed,
okay.
And all that, right?
And then they had to make a decision.
We're going to decide what the Earth is. And so actually the Neptunists were actually kind of winning the argument because there's obviously more oceans than there is land on the Earth's surface right now, right? And so they were kind of winning, but then they said, well, how do you explain the volcanoes? And they didn't have a really good way to explain the volcanoes, and so they said, well, what happens is we know that there's these big layers of coal in the Earth, and that those somehow spontaneously combust. When they spontaneously combust, it causes the heat that causes volcanoes to go off. And they were able to show that that's not the case. That's not what happens. And so they lost. The Vulcanists won. And that to this very day has held sway, that everybody has been taught that the Earth is a big ball of molten magma. Okay.
Yeah, the
Plutonicism is the volcano. There's heating going on at least somewhere in the Earth's surface. But if you take a look at a modern day, geology textbook and so forth, they're going to break the Earth into kind of, really, really four major, pieces. There's the inner part, the most inner part of the Earth, which they call the core. They now believe that's actually a single solid crystal, which is interesting.
Wow.
Then outside of that is the outer liquid core. Okay. And then there's the mantle, which is kind of about 80% of the whole Earth, basically, is the big mantle. And then sitting right on top of the mantle is this little teeny crust that if you have a basketball, like let's say a basketball size about like this, right?
Right.
The crust is supposed to be, and we know what it is actually, about the thickness of a piece of paper, a standard sheet of paper. It's about that thick on a basketball-sized Earth. So that's the crust upon which we live. Those are the crust of the Earth. Okay, that's what we've been taught, and those are fairly well defined by seismic tomography and other technologies that we can monitor how the Earth is affected by things that happen. So, for example, many people have heard of the Bikini Atoll, the atoll that was called, its name was Bikini. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first hydrogen bomb experiment.
Oh yeah.
And when they detonated that first hydrogen bomb, it actually blew that island off the face of the Earth.
Oh my goodness.
And seismometers at this point in time there were seismometers around on the Earth, and they said that the Earth rang like a bell. The pressure waves from the blast actually binged around inside of the Earth for 5 or 6 days. They could pick up reverberations of the Earth from that massive explosion that happened on the Bikini Atoll. The Earth is very dynamic, and so forth. Anyway, but one of the big questions is, where's all the heat come from? If the Earth is full of magma, where does all the heat come from? Well, we know it can't come just solely from friction. We know it doesn't come from radiation because when you go to Hawaii and so forth, I mean, when you have volcanic stuff that's come up out of the earth, it's not highly radioactive. So it's not being melted by radioactive things like the radioactivity that actually caused like the Trinity atomic explosion, which is the first atomic bomb there in the desert there in Nevada or New Mexico. And that actually caused so much heat that actually melted the sand of the area into glass. And actually they call it trinitite. It's highly radioactive.
Yeah.
And so forth. But anyway, but that's what
some said that was fake, but I don't believe it was fake.
No, that's a real deal.
It was a real thing.
If unless you believe that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed by a conventional bomb, which there's nothing like that.
No,
I mean it's interesting, all these odd conspiracy theories about how like we didn't go to the moon and we don't really have atomic weapons and all that kind of stuff, and yet
well, I have a different idea about the moon theory. Don't get me started there.
Don't get me started on the moon thing either, because I tell you what,
I'm sure
we absolutely went to the moon. We got rocks.
Well, why don't we go there anymore? Okay, but let's not get on.
We've already been there.
Oh.
We have our sights on bigger things like Mars. Although I don't think we'll ever see the day when when we're putting a man on Mars, because it's just the distances are too great, and the degradation of the human body in space is too great. I don't think we'd ever make it there.
Well, not to get on that tangent.
Yeah.
But I think Stanley Kubrick filmed the moon landing, and it was all a race against the Russians and the Chinese. But we'll go there another day. But
even so, I mean, probably one of the strongest things is that even to this day, if you have a powerful enough telescope, you can actually look onto the moon's surface and see the stuff that was left there by the astronauts.
Well, okay,
that's pretty hard to fake. Okay, anyway. But so bottom line is that radioactivity is not the way that the Earth was done. So what they finally just said is, where does all this heat come from? Well, it came from. This all goes back to the Big Bang. Okay, so at first, in fact, this is a fascinating little part of science that you don't hardly ever hear talked about. Okay, and that is that essentially, if you want to go down through from the beginning. There's been two primary theories: the theory of evolution and the theory of relativity from Einstein. That are the two theories that basically make it up from all the way from where humans started, and that we came from lower life forms, right? The theory of modern science says that all humans came from lower life forms, like the great apes and so forth, which came from still lower life forms like amoebas and other microscopic kind of life. But all of that came from chemicals, which was the result of a Big Bang, right? But what they hardly ever tell you is the end stage of that. Where did the Big Bang come from?
Right.
And they literally say it came from nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing, and then there was this something called the singularity, which then expanded into what we now know as the entire universe, which when we look at there through the Hubble Space Telescope, or the new one that they just launched about 2 or 3 years ago, worlds without end, are we discovering out there? And
let me just say this: a lot of these concepts come from are from not pious people, very godless.
Yeah.
They're not inspired.
Many of them were actually making some of these theories directly to cause doubt.
Absolutely.
And to assuage their lack of wanting to believe in God.
And Satan is the author of their dissertations.
Well, you have to put it basically just the philosophies of men, bottom line.
Right.
So anyway, so in the beginning, according to modern science, you have basically you have this a huge explosion. Then through accretion theory, the explosion, now certain areas of it start to kind of reassemble themselves together and to create planets and so forth. Then it's bombarded and cause all kinds of magma to happen. And so bottom line is the theory today is that Earth, the reason why the Earth is magma on the inside of it is because it started out that way, which is easier to try to explain, because we don't see planets doing that anywhere in the universe today that we can see, where accretion is happening that's causing it to get all hot and so forth. And then there's also this other problem, and that is that the Earth is pretty much about 70% of the surface of the Earth is covered with water. Why would it be covered with water if it was 3,000 degrees molten, roiling, magma?
Right.
That should have all that water should have been splashed into steam, which would have gone off into space, except for now, but we also have an atmosphere of the Earth, which is also unique. As far as most planets don't have.
Right. According to physics, that doesn't compute.
Right. But the bottom line is that if you take a look at the Earth from space, like the Apollo astronauts and so forth, they call it the blue marble, because it's this big, beautiful, deep blue because of all the oceans of the Earth. That's the primary color. But anyway, so we're not going to get into too much details about the magma. If you want to learn more about that, just go to the DVD and so forth. But